Welcome to Neural Insights, the podcast that will dwell into the future of human intelligence and purpose in the age of AI. You'll hear two voices across two borders, but one shared purpose.
We are two women in tech, as you can see, leading teams, shaping organizations who found ourselves sharing a synergy in our interest, though we are separated by time zones, separated by continents, and even brought up in different disciplines.
Well, here you go. Welcome to Neural Insights, where we bridge the gap between global networks and boots on the ground insights.
In a world that never stops shifting, through our podcast, we are diving deep into the trends defining our reality, from evolution of leadership and the future of work to the true power of diversity and the unstoppable rise of AI.
Well, we are not just talking to you, though. We're bringing to you the people in it. We'll be joined by emerging leaders, trendsetters, and innovators in future episodes from around the globe to give you a rounded perspective on the tech landscape.
Empowering the field, shaping the future, and bringing the world to our readers and our viewers.
Stay tuned. This is Neural Insights.
We're going to talk about human-centered AI, augmenting people instead of replacing them, or is it? Stay tuned. We have a great episode planned for you guys. So I hope you guys will like the podcast and you will take away quite a bit from here. So I'm going to start off by asking you something a bit controversial. When you hear centered AI, what does it truly mean beyond the buzzword? See, for me, it's about starting with human goals, not only about technical capabilities. And AI serves human values, capabilities by design and not by accident. That's just me. What do you think?
Yeah, no, look, I totally agree. And it's such a hot topic, and it's going to be a hot topic for a few years to come. That's my prediction. I think it's really interesting. Every Monday morning when I wake up, there's a new article about, AI taking over the world and jobs being made redundant, or people being laid off because their roles have been replaced by AI. And it's a really interesting topic because the argument is by some that we will be replaced by AI, and then there's the argument by people like myself where I believe we have to work with AI. It's not just about replacement, right? Because one of the things is every time when there's a revolution, from the time of the Industrial Revolution, jobs have always been at risk. Jobs have been replaced. They have also created new value and new opportunities. I don't know if anyone would remember the time when we had switchboards and people were manually dialing others into a phone call, be it an international phone call or a local phone call, and you would hear this little buzzer in the background, or you'd hear some music that connects you to the other person. You will not see that now. I mean, can you even imagine a human being trying to connect another human being manually? That's an entirely automated robotic process now. But, no one really lost their job and couldn't find something else. These people were trained to pick up other roles and pick up other opportunities. So when it comes down to human-centered AI, it really means about knowing where AI starts and where it ends, and where human beings need to be involved in that process. That's a very theoretical, academic kind of version of my take on this topic. But I truly believe you need to know where AI starts and where it ends, and where humans need to intervene. What do you think, in your experience, where does AI genuinely amplify human capability, Chi? I mean, how have you seen that actually work to the benefit of mankind?
I think in the current stage of AI, if you're completely removing humans from the loop, it will increase the risk, it will increase opacity, or even to an extent harm to either a person or an organization. So a human-centered design is probably still the need of the hour. And we as an organization, we as an individual should take the responsibility to create that ecosystem where we are still relevant and also not getting completely replaced by AI. Again, we are rational machines. We are exposed, as in any human is exposed to fatigue, stress, biases, fear, even cognitive overload. I know there might be a natural gravitation towards over-reliance on AI. Almost think of when we were in colleges or schools, we were, at least in the subcontinent where I've grown up, we were given calculators, but we were also taught how to do mental math before getting exposed to a calculator. So even you're using the calculator for your personal purposes, when you're sitting in an exam hall, it was always do your mental maths, and only in certain subjects you were allowed to even take the calculator. So the mental capacity, the cognitive ability is actually built from a young age. So poorly designed AI can easily shift the blame onto the users. So that's why I feel when we are growing, learning, and getting augmented by AI, a human in the loop should be the need of the hour and should not be seen as an option.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love that example that you've provided around, using calculators. I grew up outside of India. And interestingly, I started using a calculator when I was probably about 11 or 12. And my parents were shocked by this. They were like, you can't do simple maths in your head. You're doing it through a calculator. And I was like, but this is what I have to do. It's part of my exams. And so you get tuned, you sort of become very embedded into the system because you're forced to do it in a way. So again, I think also we have to bear in mind that there are implications for overusing AI, right? I mean, there's an environmental implication. So in that sense, I think it's really important, again, to know when your mental abilities need to be stimulated and need to be exercised so that you're not actually doing simple things with AI, but you're using AI for real efficiencies and some really difficult calculations or computations that can't just be generated very quickly by a human brain or within the second, for example. There was a time when we worked with kilobytes, and then we went into megabytes, and then gigabytes, terabytes, and now we're talking about peta and zettabytes, right? And if you start to look at that volume of data, the reality is we do not have the computational ability to churn that information really quickly. Machines do, but machines are created by human beings. So we do need to know the limitations, right? And I think it's really important where you can augment that in terms of making human workloads easier and better, not redundant. I mean, where can human beings spend their time instead of spending it just on, manual tasks that are just not efficient? And I'm sure the audiences that we are, that are listening to us today, probably very familiar with that topic, but what does it really mean? And I guess one of my questions to you is, in your experience, share with us, one of those really strong examples where you think, AI has actually made work better or it's made human beings better, but hasn't led to actual redundancy measures.
So again, it's a question of how we as an organization or even as a culture or a group of people, we do not get into something called automation bias. You can do it. Now the question should be, we should do it.
Should we? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I
Should we
think
do it?
that the can be is established, but should we is where we are all kind of, tap into our morality, our upbringing, our societal pressure, our commitment, so to say, right? So there are many things where AI is helping us to be more productive individuals, helping us to learn new things, where we are kind of getting into a mode where I know my skills need to be upskilled. That is where AI is coming in. How easily you have access to information which is spread across in a multimodal format. AI gives you that arena or that flexibility to constantly upskill yourself. I'm presuming the need and the intention is there. That is where I have benefited myself. Anybody who's looking to upskill themselves, learn new skills, learn new topics, I think that AI has done wonders in that field. So where do you think, Sue, we should probably think and talk as a society on the nature of tasks that exist right now and should never be considered and automated in the future, though we know probably that AI has the skill set to automate that?
Yeah, I'd definitely say it's decision making. I think one of the key things that we do need to really bring some guardrails into is decision making. A final outcome and a final decision cannot be given by AI. I use AI every single day, but I still have to actually review all the outcomes and all the outputs that are delivered by AI. And I also have noticed that I have to constantly change my prompt or change my approach to really get the answer that I want. And sometimes I actually don't even use the outcome of AI because I feel my judgment, my experience, and the outcome that I actually want is better provided by my own decision-making abilities. So I know where to draw the lines when it comes to my use of AI. But I think it's really important for those who are using AI on a constant basis to really decide, where is my judgment, my ability the most important versus that of AI. AI can synthesize, it can definitely give you volumes of information really quickly, really efficiently, but it shouldn't be the one to make the decision. You still have to review that output. You still have to be the final decision maker of that. And it's really interesting. I'll give you an example, which is more of a human example, where I've worked in environments where, you get a subcontractor to a subcontractor. And sometimes the primary contractor is not necessarily aware of the technical capabilities and technical outcomes of a subcontractor, right? And so what happens if a subcontractor builds something or writes something, and if there's an issue with it, the primary manager, the primary managing contractor does not know how to read that or does not understand what the technical purpose of that work is, and they have to, speak to a client about it or speak to their project owner about it, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to fix this problem. And so if you translate that into an AI world, AI is, developing code now, it's writing things from scratch, it's creating things from scratch. But what happens when it breaks? Or what happens when there's something actually wrong with the code and there's malicious activity in it and you cannot read code? How are you going to fix it? So, of course, I'm sure there'll be solutions in the future to all of this. But if we look at what's happening now, if we really give that kind of power to AI, we actually allowing it to make decisions that we should rightfully make. And we're allowing it to take control of things that you have absolutely no way on, or you have no idea of how to control it. And that's where it gets really dangerous and it can get really sensitive. So it's absolutely important that we have guardrails. I'm a huge fan of AI. I love tech. I've been in the field for over 15 years. So there's no way I'm going to say we shouldn't stop advancing, or we should stop advancing rather. I will say, let's have some protocols. Let's have some barriers, because the extent that we are building these machines to a point to really do every single thing, it serves no purpose. Is it really benefiting mankind? That's what we really need to think about. What do you think?
Yeah, true. Because when you look at a moral and an ethical judgment situation, like, for example, unfortunately, you might have to fire someone. Doing that through AI, doing that through an automated process is just taking the human dignity away. On the other hand, medicals, healthcare, right? Those areas where you're dealing with sensitive patient history, disease history, that becomes private information. How much of it are you willing to expose to an AI? I think these are the areas where one has to really, really think hard. And for me, I would say, I don't think these are the areas where you should have an agentic AI running and taking decisions on its own. So these are the areas where we should trade cautiously, because this is a brand new era for a human civilization. Industrial revolution have augmented our output, and you can also argue that AI is trying to do that. It's making you more productive, it's giving you time for your cognitive building, but there are certain lines that I feel at the moment as a society, or even in future, we shouldn't expose AI to take decisions and replace us. Who takes the responsibility if something goes haywire? Even I was reading a news where there's a social circuit, or rather social site, where agents are talking to each other, modbot. It's talking to each other. It's kind of bouncing up decisions and actions with each other. These are things that we have seen in sci-fi movies. What about cybersecurity? What about identity? Like when you're setting up a platform or you're setting up a software, you have to provision for identities. You have to provide access. You really need to now consider agents when you're providing access to. So these are the considerations where maybe the organizations are yet not ready and set up to deal with. So I feel it's a great new era. It gives you a lot of compute power, which was not available when you were just trying to do things on your plain and simple laptop. But we really need to understand the handrails and the guardrails that before moving and jumping all into AI.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the correct and the most important way we need to look at AI. I just wanted to go back to something you were saying earlier on around, what happens, what are the legal ramifications if we just give AI and agentic AI this power to make decisions. It's really interesting you say that, because about a month ago, the movie Mercy was released. And it is exactly about this, giving control and power to AI. And if the audience and yourself haven't seen it yet, I would highly recommend watching it. It's quite a nail biter. And it's really interesting, because you just go on this journey with AI and you're like, what's going to happen? Is it true? Is it not true? And you have this time limit to make a decision, or for a decision to be made. And I'm not going to do any spoilers, but it's a really good sort of futuristic view of what happens when you start to give control to something that's not a human being to make decisions that it's only been trained to do. So what's the whole point of that is that you're just giving it a box, and it's going to stay within the constraints of the box. And it's not going to look at the anomalies outside of the box that actually need to be considered when making a decision. Because at the end of the day, we all know it's a machine. And as much as there's supervised and unsupervised learning, it can only learn at this stage what it's fed. And yes, of course, it's growing and it's becoming bigger. There's definitely talk around AGIs. I know it's something we'll be talking about in a future episode, so I won't do any spoilers now. But, I think those are the things we really need to consider when it comes to the level of control and power you're giving to something that is being made by imperfect human beings, expecting a perfect outcome. And that's something we really need to think about. It comes down definitely to values and philosophy and some deep critical thinking, which again, we have the power to do as human beings.
I'm actually thinking on how do we as a leader, how do we as decision makers, so to say, how do we adapt? How do we create an ecosystem and an organization which is AI ready? How do we even implement it? What should be the architecture? How do we get the people on board? How do we even looking at the investment versus how AI is going to augment your production, your output, your cross-selling, your channel optimizing. So these are great things to actually, talk about. I don't think there is any playbook that's available for all of us. We are kind of learning off each other, and we are just following something which has worked in some part of the world, and maybe that might work for us too.
Right. I think this is, this is one of the never ending endings as such, and it always reminds me of how we start thinking about La La Land and where we want to be in La La Land, and why it's really important to think about AI adoption in our current environment, when realistically, the broad majority of organizations cannot even think about their North Star or the La La Land they want to be in, because they still trapped in the past. And by past, as you would know, coming from a tech background and having worked, with a volume of different organizations, so many organizations are still trying to get off legacy. They're still deciding whether it's on-premise or cloud, and that's another discussion on its own. They're deciding whether, we dump data or we evolve it and migrate it to a new system. And then they realize, oh my gosh, we are still using code that no longer exists. So what are we going to do with these people when we stop using this program, when we stop using these applications? Where do they go? Do we keep them? Do we train them? Do we upskill them? What do we do? And so again, if you want to build trust and if you want to build adoption into your organization, you have to look back to people. The whole cycle and the whole evolution of technology is not about technology itself. It's actually about the people, the users, and the environment in which it's contained in. And that's how adoption starts. And if you're talking about trust, that again can be a topic on its own. But even trust comes from the knowledge that's contained within the organization. Because again, bear in mind, you bear the risk that if you become completely dependent on the existing infrastructure and the existing technology, you're pushing all your IP, all your organizational knowledge, or even human knowledge, personal knowledge, into an environment that you can't touch. You can maybe see and you can maybe retrieve, but you can't actually touch it, and close it out if you wanted to. So it becomes, again, a really important thing that you do not want to become dependent on systems that are not in your control, but you also want to create an environment where you have the trust with your staff, your people, and yourself, and the knowledge that you've gained within that environment. So you have to create systems that are contained in your environment and that can build trust within your own knowledge base, not just what a provider or a vendor is giving to you from another environment.
Correct. I think we have to look as an organization, as leadership, who have the responsibility and the ability to take decisions for the whole organization. I would say it's no longer about tools, because now tools are getting replaced.
Exactly.
There are many startups that are getting wiped out because Claude is there or Claude is there, right? So it's about the power, the trust, and the identity inside the organization. I think we should find areas where employees are doing things which are time consuming. There are literally pain for them and not an executive ambition, right? It's kind of a repetitive thing. It drains them out. So the task that your employees would be happy to kind of let go, and it's repetitive in nature, that those are the areas where you can aggressively automate, right? You can feel the cognitive overload because you are hearing about AI everywhere. You're hearing about that your employees are probably 120% occupied. That might come more as a help from the leadership to free their cognitive self to do something which is much more appealing to them, right? So it can be their daily task. So I think in an organization where you can use AI, it shouldn't be that the leadership comes across that if you're using an AI as an employee, you are being judged by your usage metrics. It should be looked upon as it is helping you becoming more competent in areas that you probably did not have an idea about or you did not have a skill about. about. So
Yeah.
we all cannot know everything. And if you're building and implementing AI systems for an organization, these are the consideration that needs to be put in place. Again, if I flip the coin, Sue, there is also a responsibility from an employee's perspective. So if you are
Exactly.
using, an AI augmented work environment, you carry also a bit of responsibility in understanding how do you contextualize the AI output, what
Yeah.
information, what documents you can and you shouldn't upload in AI, which documents you should never expose to an AI. For example, there are multiple IP information, for example, that organization can deal with, which suddenly if you expose to AI can cause ramification for the organization. So it actually needs to be considered as two sides of the coin than just looking at it that, hey, it's coming, it's our responsibility as the leaders of the organization to drive productivity, drive ROI gains by just automating things and getting things faster. Yeah, so there is an efficiency commander, so to say. For example, you can implement that architecture where you're looking for just cost savings, margin focused. You could, as I said, possibly look for tasks which are repetitive, which are drag on employees, and look for freeing them up and encourage your employees to think about doing things creatively, innovatively, which they probably have no time before. Then you have the augmentation architecture where it's coming to you as a coworker or a co-pilot and you are doing things which is more augmented and your efficiency is also improved by using that. Then you have maybe an innovation evangelist. So a different business purpose or a different business paradigm which you couldn't explore. AI is fantastic in pattern recognition. It can actually expose or you can actually discover that there are areas where you can actually go into which you haven't quite tried before. And then you have the governance, because if you're looking at industries like a BFSI and healthcare, where there are a lot of patent, lot of medical history, a lot of banking transactions, people's private information, their savings information, those are the areas where strict guardrails, strict governance need to be put in. So for me, in the new era, a composite of all four needs to be part of a leadership discussion and how AI can be introduced into an organization, right?
Yeah, it's really important that that's how you start to see human augmentation. It's interesting though, we say, if you are using AI for efficiency measures, try and extend your workforce to start doing things that allows them to innovate, that allows them to deliver deeper insights and deeper meaningful work so that they are removed from the manual work. It's interesting though, I haven't seen that happen yet because jobs are being lost. And with those jobs being lost, are we saying that they do not have the potential to extend that human capability to something further? Is there not enough training and education in place to actually help those employees now start to innovate or start to focus their time on more impactful work, more meaningful work? I'm not seeing that happen. Yes, there's dialogues about it. And, the industry is talking a lot around how you can start to use human potential for different things that are more meaningful. But then why are people getting laid off? Why are we not using that time now to do more impactful work? I mean, that's a question. We probably don't have the answer for it today. And, it's something I do want the audience to think about. Why are we not then taking these people on a journey of really specific and human-centered work that can make a difference to society? Which also brings me to the point, and I know we've spoken about this in different conversations around using AI for social good, using AI to really solve environmental people problems. And there's so many, there's an infinite number of problems out there. And instead of actually using that potential to solve the crisis we have in the world, we are laying off people. Is that the right approach? Should we be looking at that approach? And is that the only approach? So again, something to really think about on how we can change the way we make impact, which brings me to another topic that's really important. And, it always starts at this level where, you have contributors and you have the innovators, you have people who are a little bit further away from governance and boards who start to innovate and create these fantastic solutions. And then you start to see the hype take place and you start to see more and more organizations wanting to do similar things or wanting to, for example, like now be on that AI journey. So I guess when we're talking about that, then how do we then start to talk about boards needing to be equipped for the age of AI? What do you think needs to be considered as part of their decision making now? What's your experience, Chi?
Again, I don't think there is enough and more use cases that we can say has seen the entire life cycle of AI implementation, stabilization, and then giving you a 5 to 7 years or 5 to 10 years of productive outcomes, because It's not there, right? We are still riding that horse and we are trying to figure out whether we need to go at a 2x speed, we need to go at 5x speed, or we need to just be in the momentum, right? So I don't think there is one answer that I can give you that this is how the very top of the organization need to respond, need to change. But the dialogue that's happening right now, the investment decisions dialogues that are happening, needs to have AI, the cost of investing in AI, as like almost part of every discussion. How can the entire organization benefit, not only just looking at margin, but also benefit as a whole culturally
Yeah.
if we bring in AI into the organization, right? It's, as I said, margins are very important, ROIs are very important. We all need to think how we can live in this era where AI is helping me becoming a more skillful individual. I wouldn't say better, but I would say skillful. It's a lot to learn. And sometimes it's going to be a very difficult journey ahead as well. Not only interesting, but maybe it's going to be really difficult as well.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's definitely going to be difficult over time. And, it's almost like we are enacting change as it happens. So there really isn't a playbook as such. You're absolutely right about that. We are basically planning for the future, not knowing whether the future will happen or not in the way we presume it, right? So yeah, which again, brings us now to the more important thing around an AI augmented world. What do you think is now really important? And this is, again, a topic that's been stretched. And I don't think there's any topic with AI that does not talk about skills. But, how there's some unique skills we really can harness. It's interesting. I actually had, a few conversations with people around AI, and someone mentioned that, construction is something that won't probably be replaced by AI anytime soon. And another person mentioned, I actually run a cleaning business, and I don't think that's going to be replaced by AI anytime soon. So it's really interesting because those are roles we probably wouldn't traditionally have considered, but now it's being considered because people want to be irreplaceable. So what are those skills that are irreplaceable from your experience, not just because of AI, but as a tech leader and as someone who's seen the whole environment be shaped and stretched and, how it's evolved? What do you see? And I'll definitely share my perspective.
Yeah, I think two aspects of the skills journey that I would say one needs to kind of reflect and evaluate their own standing at the moment. So one is the softer skills, like for example, problem framing, decision making under uncertainty, right? You have been conditioned, or as a human being, we have been conditioned to be, to be action oriented, taking decisions when you need to kind of move into an area which you are not familiar. So those decision making skills are ingrained in you. It's now codified into a neural network, for example. Now, the first principle reasoning, right? These are fundamentals of every human being. Sometimes we realize it, sometimes we don't. A simple example, when you are teaching your kid how to cross the road, it's a simple set of first, as in it's a great example of first principle thinking, and also a great example of simple instructions. Look left, look right, see if the road is clear, stop for the traffic signal. So these are codified things which has been ingrained into human beings for decades, for ages. And we are trying to translate that into a machine, right?
Yeah.
Then you have the hard skills where you're learning about logistic regression, you're learning about engineering, you're learning about data engineering, AI engineering, you're learning about hard skills around Python coding, for example. I'm just trying to, simplistically break it down into a soft skill perspective and a hard skill perspective, because at every stage of this AI journey, some of the job will be at stake. Ambiguous right now to say that this particular job will never get redundant or never get AI washed, so to say, right? But having said that, I still, being in the tech field, I still very strongly feel that there should be hard lines as a society which we implement to kind of go back to what we can do versus what we should do, so that some of it is, we still have the human element left in our society and civilization. What do you think? What skills do you feel?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I mean, I think AI is pretty much doing everything human beings can do at a high level, right? At a surface level. I'm not going to say it can go deep, because being a daily user of AI, I can see how many changes need to take place with AI to really get it to be somewhat of a so-called perfect system. And the reality is, if you're going to give everything to AI, you're going to forget to read, write, and even start talking. And, people who know me know that I love movies. And one of the movies that I really enjoyed was last year's Planet of the Apes, the recent version, and the recent production rather. And the whole thing about that was that human beings can't talk, they can't read, they can't write, and that's what we're going to become if we just give everything back to, not even back, but if we just give everything to machines and expect machines to deliver for us. There's no need to read and write. Right? But yeah, those skills on reading, writing, computation, mathematical skills, philosophical skills, the deep thinking skills to question, just because AI did it or said it, it's not right. You have to be able to question it and understand, how can this maybe be improved? Should it be improved? But then more importantly, when you're dealing with, a project or a task or something of value, I think the important thing to really think about is, do I need AI? Is this what AI needs to deliver to me, or can I do it myself? I mean, society is changing on a constant basis. There was a time when, computers were created and, people were like, nah, we're never going to bring computers into the organization. And then computers came and, got replaced by laptops and, now handheld devices like our phones. Of course, they still exist though. But as much as devices have improved, the power and the ability of your desktop computer had to improve. So if we think about that analogy, we are like that. As human beings, we need to improve with the times as well, right? And I don't know if you recall when, the Y2K bug was around, it was a big deal and it was a big problem and jobs came up from like everywhere because, we thought the world was going to end. It didn't end. We qualified from university, and how we position ourselves for our jobs, they will always be there. And what you have to do, and the skill that you probably have to learn, is reinventing yourself and being creative about it so that you stand out from the crowd and you are seen and heard for the individual that you are. I mean, there's definitely a whole list of skills I can provide, but it's nothing that hasn't been seen or heard. Yeah. But that creativity, that reinvention is what's going to be a skill you'll need to constantly do in life. Instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be replaced, I'm going to lose a job, what's going to happen? Instead of that, think about reinvention. And that is not something AI can actually replace.
So what gives me hope and what gives you hope? We are separated by continents, we are separated by ocean, we are working in different time zones, we have a different societal element that's happening around us. So what gives you hope in this situation?
Well, this may be seen in jest, and I may say this in jest, I don't really mean it, but what gives me hope is that I can pull the plug. I can pull the plug, I can stop AI, you can stop data centers. None of that can actually survive without energy and the environment, right? So at some point, you're going to need human beings. But yeah, I say that in jest. But the reality is, what gives me hope is that I can constantly, as a person, evolve myself. And I've done that. And I know many other people who've done that. So the hope is not to feel threatened by competition, human competition or machine competition, not to feel threatened by that, but to rise above it. And that's what gives me hope, is that we can rise above it. We can take courage and we can find things that make us truly unique. You just have to reposition yourself and learn that you have to adopt to change, because change is constant. It'll always be there. Like they say, birth, life, death, and taxes, and now change. It's always there and it's always going to be there. So that's the hope. What about you?
For me, I think, Sue, I'll look at history to be on our side. When back in the days, like really rewind, go back to the mainframes. When IBM built the first mainframes, people feared mass unemployment. Even when, Microsoft put a computer on every desk, we feared loss of craftsmanship. When Google indexed, first time when we remember the first time when we saw Google, we didn't know what it was. We didn't know whether it is tangible, it's intangible. What is it? Right? So it indexed the whole world's knowledge, and all you have to do is your power lies in your fingers. You just have to type. Right? And we fear that we will not going to remember things, right? We will just pull it up and say, hey, the Battle of Plassey was fought in this year. So just Google it. So we will lose memory. I think each era, we saw that, right? I think that's why I feel history being on our side, it gives us an opportunity, and it also gives human being the adaptability. And if we are adaptable, we can outpace that fear.
Agree.
That's fear so that, lurking around the corner. I think every one of us in some shape and form have feared that this is coming to at a time when we are at our, the peak of our health or our peak of our career or the peak of our age, when this is not supposed to come as a disruption. I think that fear is there, but I think that adaptability that all of us are born with, I think we will overcome it.
Yeah. I mean, human beings are very flexible. If you just try, I think we're very flexible. But yeah, I think that's a great segue to our conclusion, Chi. I think this was such a great conversation to really talk about it from different perspectives, considering, we live in different continents, practically different continents. But, we share very similar experiences that also is shaped by our work environment and our personal environments. I loved this episode. It was so fantastic collaborating with you. I'm looking forward to the next one. If anyone in the audience has resonated with us, or if you'd just like to say a hi, please drop in a comment and connect with us on LinkedIn. Both of us have backgrounds working in corporate as well as for ourselves. We'd love to meet you. So share a comment, like, subscribe, and share this podcast. And we look forward to interacting with you in the next session. Thanks, Chi.
Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.